let's look at the Passover feast. What is it, when it takes place, what it represents, as we begin this journey together as far as even understanding it. Passover is really one night. Immediately following that is the Feast of Unleavened Bread and is associated with it. So it's corporately together. Whenever we hear the term Passover feast, it's a combination of these together, but we're going to be taking a look at these different feasts and how they're all tied together. The timing of all this is the springtime. It's during the month of Aviv. All right, Aviv means a new beginning, spring. You probably heard of Tel Aviv, which means a tale of new beginnings. The time, it's a time when life is beginning. It's after the winter time. It's a time of celebrating life emerging, celebrating redemption, new life, a time of resurrection, a time of resurrection from the dead. The backdrop of the Passover is the Egyptian bondage, where the Hebrews are going to be released, and it's like that time of winter. It's a time whenever everything is really dark and covering, and it's like, you're all ready to break out of winter time and move into the springtime. They were under bondage. They were going to be redeemed. It's all about to take place. Resurrection from the death of their bondage, and that is the significance to Israel. For those of us who journey with Jesus Christ, it even has more significance because we share in the heritage of God's move through the lineage of faith from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph to Christ and what he has brought us. We have been redeemed from the bondage of sin and of slavery. And it's a time of looking at the realization of what sin brings to us, how sin brings condemnation, how it brings guilt, how it brings turmoil in all the different parts of our life. Whenever we look at marriages, over 50% of marriages end up in divorce. And it's because of that whole bondage that exists there and the selfishness of sin. And so we want to fill all the different things around us. And that bondage that we experience from all those different things is the same kind of bondage that he was talking about there that they were going to be free from. So as we look at the Passover, it goes back, all of this ties back to the Exodus that happened from Egypt. That we identify ourselves with the forefathers who were also redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. It was not that lamb that brought redemption for them. It was what or who those lambs represented. Each lamb that was killed and whose blood was painted on the doorpost represented Jesus, who was killed for all of our redemption. Past, present, and future. That we've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. You know the song? I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. The significance of the Passover is pointing us to the blood of Jesus Christ that was sacrificed. As those lambs were sacrificed so that they could live, so that they'd be redeemed, so the Jews would be redeemed to be taken out of Egypt, that the first step of the process had to be their redemption and the redemption of their children. So their firstborns were not killed, but everybody who did not have that blood, that they'd be losing their firstborn. And it was massive what took place. The significance of the Feast of Unleavened Bread talks about taking any leaven out of our home. So then the only bread eaten would be unleavened bread. Leaven is a symbol of sin. So believers in Jesus realize that we have been cleansed from leaven or sin and empowered to walk in a new life. That we're born again is what the term that we use so often, we hear so often. As we take the leaven out of our home, it gives us a chance to really focus on two main things. First, it's a time of praise as we reflect on the sin that God has brought victory over in our lives, into our lives already. How he's brought different victory. That we get to celebrate the changes that he has already made in our lives by the renewing of our minds to bring joy to him. So it's focused on him and what he's done in our lives. So it's a time as we're taking the leaven out of our house. And it took place for the Jews back then and for us today. As we take the leaven out of our house, to take it completely out, it's a time for us to think about and focus on the fact that Jesus has done different things in our lives already. It's a time for us to really focus not on just taking the leaven out, not just taking that physical leaven out, but a time for us to really think and process through and to do it together. To do it together with our brothers and sisters and to think about, so as we come together as home church each week, to really talk about what has been the leaven, what has been the change, what has been the sin that he has taken out of our life over this past year. What has been the change? And to look at each other and to share with each other, this is the change I've seen in you. And so as you take that leaven out to be able to celebrate it, that he has done this. He's taken that sin out of our life. We haven't done it. He's done it. So the first aspect of it is really to celebrate the work that God has done inside of us, the change that he has taken. We usually just live our lives and we don't even think about the changes that have taken place in our life, that has taken place over the last year in our lives. And so as we clean it out, it's a time for us to talk about with each other and to share the changes that we've seen in our life. Because we know that Jesus alone has changed us, it is a time of praise to him, not a time of stroking each other and saying, hey, good job, baby, you did a good job. It's a time of really looking at, man, isn't it amazing what God can do, how he changed us? A time to glorify him and affirm the journey that we're on with him. So many times we don't experience that in our lives, or it becomes so rudimentary that we're used to doing it, going through the motions all the time, that it's no significance. But God has the Passover set, the Feast of Unleavened Bread set once a year for us to come back and to really focus on this, to really give him praise, but to give that with each other, so that we're sharing in what God has done, and we get to glorify God for what he has done. The second aspect of taking the leaven out is a time to ask God to show us areas of our lives that have got to be changed, that need to be changed in our lives. And as he shows us, it is not for self-condemnation or for others' condemnation or God's condemnation. It is a time to ask God, like David did in Psalm 139. It says, search me, O God, know my heart, see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. It takes time to look for all the things that have leaven in them in our house, to go through all the different things, all the boxes, and take a look and see, does this have leaven in it? Does that bread have leaven in it? Does this box, what all has leaven? Because there's all kinds of things that have leaven in it. It takes time to do that. And it's surprising where all we're going to find leaven as we go through that. In the same way, it takes time to listen to God closely to hear what he has to say to us. That's why he has us do these physical expressions to point us to those spiritual truths. It's a time to look at how passionate am I really about loving Jesus? How passionate am I really about being pure for Jesus, that pure bride for him, for asking for him to change me? It's a time for us to look at what all is taking his place as a substitute God in our lives and relationships, and to get those things out of us. And to do that, to get things out of us, it's not us doing it.